Welcome back to Wellness with Delaney. Today I'm with Alex Tarnava. He's the inventor of H2 tabs. If you haven't heard of H2 tabs, it's an insane hydrogen water tablet that does a million benefits for your body. I mean, if you look at the box alone, the list just keeps going on of the things it does for your body. So I'm so excited to get him on the show to talk about how it works, what it does, and how you guys as the audience can benefit from this simple biohack. Alex, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, so you are an inventor. I would just love to start by how did you even get into the world of hydrogen and invent this supplement?
Yeah, I'll try and keep this as brief as possible. It's a really long story, but about a decade ago, I had a completely different business that gave me a lot of freedom. Um, and I was training, exercising as an amateur athlete, 4 to 6 hours a day, sometimes more.
Wow.
And a few things happened in succession. I ended up being in a weakened state, got a virus which triggered an autoimmune like response. I had sudden onset narcolepsy. I had central nervous system fatigue. I couldn't jump an inch off the ground, couldn't do anything explosive or reactive. Um, I was sleeping 16 to 18 hours a day. And I was just in rough shape. My C reactive proteins were like 35 milligrams a liter, so
Wow.
probably 100 times abnormal for my age and everything at that time. I was 29. So it was a rough period. That lasted a couple months. When the dust settled, I had osteoarthritis in 11 joints. And my GP put me on 1,000 milligrams of naproxen a day. So think of like taking 5 times a daily dose of Aleve and cortisone injections.
Wow.
And at 29, I just knew that wasn't a forever solution. The time I had spent exercising and more, I just went on PubMed and I was reading 8+ hours a day, just study after study, looking for anything that could regulate the inflammatory response rather than just suppress it. Hydrogen popped up, so did a lot of other things. I just kind of threw everything against the wall to see what was working, went on my merry way. But about 9 months after that, I fainted in the gym a few times. The naproxen had given me ulcers, and I wasn't processing nutrients properly, so I had to stop that abruptly. Um, when I stopped the naproxen, my joints froze. I couldn't put on socks or a shirt or anything like that. So I knew none of the biohacks I was doing was actually working. I went back to PubMed. I saw some new studies on hydrogen. At first, it kind of pissed me off because I had this $5,000 machine and it wasn't seemingly doing nothing for me. But something clicked, and I just thought, how do I even know I'm getting hydrogen? And so I started
Mm.
buying the full papers to read the materials and methods to see how they were doing it in the clinical trials and the preclinical studies. None of them were using a machine like what I bought. So then I found a reagent to test for the presence of hydrogen in water, and it was undetectable. I had to more than triple the input to reduce a single drop. So it was like 0.03 parts per million or milligrams a liter. So it gave me a bit of hope. I started experimenting, trying to figure out how could I make hydrogen water because it was no longer a dead end. I just hadn't tried it yet. Um, Ended up making my first tablets just like on my countertop. Within a couple weeks, my joints had unseized
Wow.
and I felt great. Um, but also, I was concerned because I was thinking, well, I know enough about the chemistry to make this, but I'm not a chemist. I need to ensure that I'm not creating some other toxic molecule that's going to kill me, or
Right.
destroy my liver over time. Uh, I need to test for contaminants, need to do all this stuff. So I found my founding partner, Dr. Holland. He's from the pharmaceutical industry. He's a chemist, right? Designs molecules. He thought it was the worst pseudoscience he'd ever heard in his life, but I was able to rebut all his objections with peer-reviewed data. He eventually started working and reviewing what I'd done, and I kept sending him new papers every day. Serendipitously, one caught his interest on a certain disease model that he was actually designing small molecules for. He called me for lunch and said, listen, the other studies, I just read the conclusions and check the materials and methods to see if it's well designed. But in this study, I'm actually a subject matter expert, and unless this is fraud, this stuff works. Are you
Wow.
sure you just want to as a do it yourself, or do you want to like commercialize this? So I thought long and hard. I wasn't a fan of the supplement industry, but I figured I could navigate it and kind of carve my own way. That started a long project. It was like 3 weeks to get our formula working in a mortar and pestle to make like 20 at a time, but about 16 months of R&D, 15 failed scale up attempts, and thousands of formula changes and changes to process to get our first production ready tablet. Because making a few by hand is just dramatically different than making millions at high speed and doing it safely and making sure they work the same every time. Um, then, we got that, and I just thought, well, there's this research, but do I know that works on my product? And so I just obsessively emailed every single first author and corresponding author of every single clinical trial and all of the preclinical trials on hydrogen at that time, offering product placebo donations and not to tie their hands with contracts, like they can publish regardless of outcome. And just kind of went from there. And it's gotten to the point now, maybe I have no idea how many formula adjustments we have. We have a lab now. It could be 10,000, it could be 20,000. I have no idea, but we're just continuing to improve and refine and work with research teams on the hydrogen tablets. We now have over 20 clinical trials. We have 21 validated structure function claims to FTC and FDA standards. More are coming. Our expert panel has to reconvene because we have a handful of new clinical trials since those were issued. Um, and we actually have more research currently underway than we have published.
Wow.
So it's just going to continue growing. And I'm aware of some of the results that are pretty strong too. So it's looking pretty good. Um, all in all, with the hydrogen tablets, we have more research than every other commercial hydrogen water product combined, with, again, more research underway than published. And we get by a landslide the highest concentration in dose. And it's repeatable every time, so it doesn't break down or anything like that.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I actually found out about you guys at there was an event with Aries and so Aries Tech, the EMF and electromagnetic environment health company, and then Biohack Yourself Media, Gary Brecka was involved. And so I got to try H2 Taps. That's how I learned about it. Love it. And I think what's really cool about you guys is, the supplement industry is very vast and it can be the Wild West. I think there's a lot. I mean, if I had $1 for every supplement company that has emailed me to partner, I would be rich. I could retire. There are so many companies, but you guys aren't one of those random fringe companies on the internet. Like you have big minds like Gary Brecka involved, which I think is really cool to have that stamp of approval when there's a lot of companies out there that really don't do that much, right? Like I'll just say that. And you guys are
Yeah,
really
yeah,
validating it. So
yeah.
how did you get people like Gary Brecka
Um,
involved in your company?
and just to clarify, so H2 Tab is Gary and his son Cole's brand, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
work with them closely. They utilize my technology. So basically, they're one of the top brands. I supply to brands all over the world. And you're right, even amongst brands I supply to, some don't care. They just put it on their shelves, don't ask questions. Gary and Cole and their whole team, they're constantly messaging me with questions, asking for clarifications on the science, and they're really trying to understand and learn more every day. So I really commend them
I
on
love
that.
that.
Um, but yeah, I think with Gary, he got really interested in hydrogen, and then he just went down the rabbit hole of what the research was saying. He kept on seeing the tablets pop up, pop up, pop up, pop up, and that's when he got a hold of me, or rather, Cole got a hold of me, and we went along that way, and we've had a really, really good relationship since then.
That's an incredible. I mean, that's a really incredible relationship to have. I mean, he's one of the guys in biohacking, so that's really amazing for you guys. Okay, so with hydrogen, is it like nitric oxide where it's something that we should be producing but we're deficient in it, or is it something else entirely?
Yeah, no, very, very similar. So to understand why hydrogen is having this profound effect in this seemingly pleiotropic effect affecting so many genes and functions in the body, we have to go to the very beginning of evolution and understand how it's been with us since the start. So our last universal common ancestor, the single-celled organism, which led to all life on this planet, actually consumed hydrogen as its fuel source from volcanic vents. So it's been with us since the beginning. And then even our mitochondria, which came from eukaryotes, which were basically a handshake deal between a couple of organelles, one of which expelled hydrogen as a waste product. So it's been with us since mitochondria too came along with it. Now, all living things evolved with a way to keep hydrogen with us. With humans, how we do this, and with I believe all mammals, is by fermentation of non-nutritive carbohydrates, so fiber, polysaccharides. And the reason this is important is throughout the majority of our evolution, up until the last 10,000 years anyways, we were consuming 100 to 150 grams of dietary fiber per day. Now, the average person is consuming 10 to 15 grams of fiber a day, but that includes like raw food vegans. People on, say, like a fast food diet might get 0 to 3 grams of fiber a day. So bacteria is like any other living thing. If you stop feeding it, it will die. And when those hydrogen producing bacteria die, methanogens take over and they produce methane. And methane is just a waste product that has no benefit in the body. And we know this is just correlative, so it's not causation, but there's a strong correlation between rising breath methane, all-cause mortality, and basically every chronic disease.
Wow.
We also know from a correlative standpoint that when we've studied like centenarians, people over 100 years in places like Okinawa, they have higher breath hydrogen than the average young person, even their direct descendants.
Wow.
So something about their lifestyle has kept this hydrogen producing bacteria. Now, we know we've extended the lifespan of like ringworms with hydrogen. We know that in rodent studies, by administering hydrogen even at middle age and the early stages of old age, it dramatically extends their median lifespan. So not their maximal lifespan, their median lifespan. So if you look at the mice that don't get hydrogen, they're scattered all throughout the normal life expectancy, like a human living like anywhere from like 60 to like 110. The hydrogen mice are all like 100, 110. They're just packed right at the maximal lifespan for them. In that research too, the mice developed, none of the hydrogen mice developed any neurological diseases. So
wow,
kind of protected them from that. And that kind of gets us into why I think replacing hydrogen is important. And you look at why it's doing so many things, and that just isn't the case for most molecules, right? Most molecules, especially pharmaceuticals, are designed to target a single receptor, a single pathway, and to move one needle, which can have a benefit in certain diseases, but can cause systemic chaos and changes inside of things. Hydrogen works more like an adaptive stress, like hormesis, like exercise or cold exposure or heat exposure or fasting, especially caloric restriction and fasting. It activates a lot of the same stress adaptation pathways that all of these other hormetic agents do, but critically, most hormetic stressors operate on like a J curve or a reverse J curve, where you start administering it and health outcomes improve in certain regards, then it'll plateau, and then too much and it's harmful. We haven't even found a plateau with hydrogen yet, let alone it becoming harmful. But despite having no even plateau yet, the responses at the cellular level are often more aggressive and profound than these other more harmful hormetic stressors. And I have a hypothesis on this. It's a nice story. It's just, again, a hypothesis. It's a bit of conjecture, but the times when we would have had the most hydrogen during evolution would have been when we're starving. When we couldn't hunt and kill something, we would have started eating a ton of plant-based food, which up until 10,000 years ago, our fruits and vegetables had exponentially more fiber in them than they do today. 10,000 years of horticulture, we have purposefully stripped the fiber from our food to make them easier to eat, more palatable. That's actually why we have problems with our teeth now.
Yeah.
It was a strong jaw from all the chewing and gnawing at this fibrous food that kept our teeth in place, right? So times when we were about to starve because we had no food and we get this huge spike in hydrogen gas could have carried with us through evolution as sort of an anticipatory stress. So our body goes, we're about to be under stress. And then we start triggering these adaptation pathways to prevent ourselves from dying, right? To protect ourselves. So, for instance, this is actually backed up by a little bit of research in fruit flies, Drosophila. If you starve them to death with or without hydrogen, the hydrogen-fed fruit flies live substantially longer
Wow.
by activating these stress pathways.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a big consideration because hydrogen it's shown to do so much. And the question becomes, how is it doing all these things? It's shown to have potential benefits in like over 200 disease models across every organ in the body. How? Right? And that could be an answer as to why. It is
Mm.
just its kind of regulatory role in triggering our body to respond to an anticipated stress. And of course, in life, there is a constant barrage of stress. So if we're always triggering this adaptive responses to fight the stress, we're mitigating the damage the stress is doing in real time.
Yeah, this is okay. This is really fascinating to me. And it sounds like the benefits are really endless, which is what I would love to get into a little bit. So I know you mentioned it has really incredible longevity benefits. So then I'm assuming along with that, are there also some beauty benefits to taking hydrogen?
There has been some studies on topical hydrogen for like reduction in wrinkles and better skin complexion and everything like that. Absolutely. Um, Longevity benefits. We do have one clinical trial on an elderly population, so 70 plus. It was 6 month double blind placebo controlled. We saw some very interesting results. Basically, in the 6 months, we lengthened telomeres, and there was a substantial
Wow.
reduction in the placebo group, improved DNA methylation, brain metabolism, and this protein called TET2, TET2. So TET2 is linked to young blood. If you've seen the vampire mouse research where they take the blood of a young mouse and put it in an aged mouse and it revitalizes their skeletal tissue, that's
Yeah.
linked to TET2. So we almost doubled that in the
So it's like
blood.
what Brian Johnson does with his son, right? Kind of similar.
Yeah, I think he's done that. Yeah, I think I've seen that. Now, it's this study is really interesting because it was recruited in the spring of 2020. So these elderly people were on lockdown. They couldn't go to the gym. They could
Mhm.
not really leave the house. Somehow, their telomeres lengthened even under all this stress, and they dropped massively in the placebo group, which is expected. And somehow they got more fit. So, for instance, in like the sit stand test, at an average age of 77 or 78, I can't quite remember, they could sit and stand more times before they were tired at the end of 6 months than at the start in the hydrogen group.
Oh my gosh.
So, like some functional benefits. Now, we need to replicate this. None of this is definitive. It was
Yeah.
just the first clinical trial. It was a double-blind RCT with 40 people, but we need a lot more research here. And I do want to caution as well. Hydrogen does a lot, but I wouldn't say it's a cure for anything. It's not magic. It's more like a lifestyle intervention. Like if
Hmm.
you clean up your diet, you're going to see widespread systemic changes. If you start exercising, you're going to see widespread systemic changes. Hydrogen is the same thing. It moves a lot of needles at the same time. It doesn't move any one marker like pounded aggressively like a drug does.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's important where I overall my audience here are the people that want to take their health into their own hands. The what I see from people are the ones who will get a diagnosis and instead of wanting to throw a pharmaceutical at it, they want to get curious and figure out how they can eat their way to health, move their way to health, even supplement their way to health. That's so I think that's a really just strong understanding in this group of people, which I think is really beautiful, something I absolutely love. And that's where I think H2 tabs can come in really beautifully. So you mentioned it helped elderly become more fit. What about for people who are like my age or younger who are just wanting to work out in the gym and see more gains?
So we had two clinical trials that published just in this last year, and there's a ton of research on hydrogen in general and exercise, right, and recovery. So the one trial was done on all females, and it was elite athletes in Russia, so Olympic level athletes.
Wow.
In 28-day double-blind placebo-controlled, these world-class female athletes improved body composition, which one we were not expecting. They lost a little bit of fat and gained a little bit of muscle, right?
Amazing.
And it was statistically significant. And any change like that in a world-class athlete is actually insane. But
Yeah.
it improved their fitness and had anti-fatigue effects. So in basically leg extension, right, that it improved their peak torque, but more substantially after they'd exercised, showing the anti-fatigue, and it blunted the rise in creatine kinase, which is a marker of muscle damage. So that was a really interesting study. Again, double-blind, placebo-controlled RCT. I was an author on that paper. And then at the same time, we were doing a paper in basically the opposite population, right? And we did that one in Serbia, and I was an author on that paper too. I actually went to Milan, Italy, and we presented at a conference called ESPN. So in that study on a 50 and older population of unfit individuals, so they had no adult exercise initiation, and they had to start like doctor guided exercise protocols. The placebo group saw like borderline rhabdomyolysis. They had a 700% increase in creatine kinase
Oh my
and an
gosh.
1100% increase in myoglobin. They were under extreme stress from starting this exercise, as you'd expect from
Yeah.
people late middle age entering, old age who have never exercised and have to start a protocol because they're so unfit.
Sure.
Um, the hydrogen saw no significant rise in either creatine kinase or myoglobin that blunted those rises. It regulated the cortisol response, showing better stress adaptation. In both men and women, it improved free testosterone and DHEA. And I fought the team, they didn't publish it, but in the raw data, in women alone, it improved sleep outcomes. And,
Wow.
and so this is actually a trend we're actually seeing. I'm getting more and more teams to agree to do gender analyses after. We have a few studies that are published that are showing a stronger response in women than men. It could be estrogen mediated because estrogen plays a big role in antioxidant defenses. But we have a handful of other studies we did where the teams didn't publish the gender differences. And every
Hmm.
single time it was a stronger response in women than men. And now by getting permission to show other universities, look, it's always women that are getting a stronger response. And when we analyze this, body mass cannot account for it. So
Hmm.
now I'm getting more and more teams to agree, okay, we're going to put in the protocol that we are doing a gender analysis from the get-go, because just how publishing in academia works, they were afraid that they were going to be criticized for like cherry picking data that they
Yeah.
hadn't set out in the protocol at the beginning. But
Wow, that's amazing. And I love that because I think women's health, it can feel like a mystery for women because you could be eating the exact same thing every day and then one day you start to gain weight because it's hormonal or it's thyroid related or all these things, right? I see this all the time. Or just there's so many things that go on that seem to be under researched or there are dead ends when women are trying to get answers. So to have something that strongly works for women, this is a really fascinating thing to dig into. And I know obviously I don't want to make any claims. You guys are still working on studies, but really promising. And I find that very interesting. So in general, let's say for like hormone health for women who are struggling with hormone imbalances or they're trying to conceive and struggling with just unexplained infertility, do you think that there could be any benefits for the hormones for women and just balancing everything?
possibly. Now, what I'll say, we have a number of papers like in peer review in mice. Unfortunately, they're all in male, but
Yeah.
we're showing under numerous different types of stress that we're improving like spermatogenesis in male mice,
Wow.
and we improved it in a small little pilot study in human males. It's difficult. I've been trying to get clinical trials on like pregnant women to see if it affects their health and women trying to conceive to see if it helps that. Ethics boards are extremely sensitive to do
Hmm.
any research like that. And
Yeah.
there is some research in mice showing benefits to like female mice, both like during pregnancy and such, and to the offspring as well. Um, so far, three different universities have tried to put protocols together, and the ethics boards have killed them all. And it ends up being this kind of like, you know, catch 22 paradox type thing where every institutional review board, every ethics board says we can't do research because there's no research in humans, even though there's research in mice. But how do
Mm,
you get research in humans if
right.
everyone is saying you can't research this until there's research in humans?
Yeah, that's really difficult. And I mean,
It, it,
I would imagine with pregnancy, you're going to run into a lot of sensitivities there. Like nobody wants, very few people I think would want to be the subject when they're pregnant. So, but are you guys, so you guys are safe for pregnancy then?
we can't say that,
Okay,
right? Any supplement that doesn't have substantial research by laws in pretty much every country says consult your practitioner,
sure.
right? If you're, pregnant, breastfeeding, or trying to conceive. So that's what I'd say. There just isn't human data on it.
Yeah.
Now, the rodent data suggests it's beneficial, right? But we can't advise that. Now, we are working with another team in another Western nation that has a department that only does research on pregnant women and the offspring, and
Wow.
they're trying to put together a protocol to test
Really
this.
cool.
So I'm really crossing my fingers that that goes through because I would love to see this research. I do think that it is plausible that it can help. I suspect the safety is very high from everything we know about hydrogen, but I cannot from a legal standpoint, say that it's safe. So I would just say for every woman in this situation trying to listen, uh, there is research out there. Show it to your doctor and just get your doctor's guidance and consider the fact that there isn't human data yet,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
That's so valid. And hopefully that'll come out soon. I mean, it sounds like there might be some exciting news underway. So I'm excited to follow along and see what happens there. So, kind of going into metabolism, because I know we had talked a little bit off camera about how H2 tabs can be a really big game changer when it comes to balancing hunger hormones, when it comes to just really activating your metabolism. And I know my audience here is always looking for ways to biohack their metabolism. Can we dig into that a little bit?
Yeah, and this is one of the areas that hydrogen water actually really shines over other methods like inhalation because it's getting into the gut, and a lot of our metabolic health comes from our gut. So, hydrogen water exclusively has shown to interact with the microbiome. It's shown to interact with different hormones in the gut, and it's shown to do this in a regulatory role rather than how, say, certain drugs do it by just throttling something full blast. So, first, I'll use GLP-1 as an example, right? So we have a pair of studies, one in humans, one in mice, that really show how hydrogen is regulating GLP-1 rather than just activating it. So
Incredible.
in the first study in rodents, we induced obesity. And so what happens when obesity comes on rapidly? It's similar to like what happens to insulin, that our bodies throttle it, trying to fix the problem, and then it kind of breaks that mechanism and it drops down and we can't produce it. So we over respond to rapid weight gain by activating GLP-1. And if that gets pushed through, like what happens in chronic obesity, then we don't get a rise in GLP-1 after we eat. Now, in this rodent study, we attenuated the rise in GLP-1 during this obesity activation, right? So it didn't over throttle it. But interestingly, the hydrogen group resisted weight gain and they ate less and they didn't eat as much of this high fat feed. So we also have research showing that hydrogen affects the neurochemistry involved with weight gain. So there's multiple mechanisms at play here. But in this human clinical trial on chronically obese people, 8-week double-blind placebo-controlled, so these are people who have broken their GLP-1 mechanism that is going to be chronically low, we significantly increased it. So we were restoring that function. Now, we've seen something similar with ghrelin. So a lot of people say, well, isn't ghrelin a hunger hormone? You know, you don't want to raise ghrelin. Well, that's not true. Like ghrelin peaks and drops, right? You get a spike and then a drop. So when you're hungry, you want ghrelin. You want to feel hungry. And after you eat, you want it to crash, right? And ghrelin plays a lot of other really critical roles. It plays a role in glucose homeostasis, in insulin sensitivity, and it's also neuroprotective. So it plays a big role in our brain's protection mechanisms. So we restored again in obese individuals this ability to spike ghrelin when hungry. Because what happens in obese populations is they never get the peak in the valley. Their ghrelin just kind of mid-level. So they're never like really hungry and they're never full. They're just always kind
Mm,
of and eating little bites and treats all day
yeah.
long. Um, it's just shown to, again, with the hydrogen tablets, move all the needles in the right direction. And I have a paper I'm about to submit on this, and I write about it in what will be my fourth book that I'll release sometime next year. Um, kind of like how academic publishing has evolved. You know, it wasn't always privatized like it is now. That's a rather modern thing that really exploded in about 1958 is when the big increase to the private publishing happened from like nonprofit societies of intellectuals and academics. Um, at that same time is when this kind of like single molecule for single receptor pathway theory of pharmacology started emerging. And with the overlapping financial interests at play, there's a plausible explanation that the early days of research formed what we understand as consensus and empirical evidence, which has drifted all research since then. So there doesn't have to be a grand conspiracy in academia. There could have just been a small conspiracy in the formative years by private interests, and that's just human nature, that affected the entire direction of how everything went down. So now a lot of these rules that we accept as fact. Like we have to look for a single target for a disease model that hits a statistical significance, right? And we want to see big numbers here. Well, you change one thing out of harmony, right? Out of homeostasis when nothing else is changing. Well, you might get some benefit there, but it also could cause big issues. And you
Hmm.
look at lifestyle interventions like exercise, like dietary intervention, they wouldn't pass large scale phase 3 trials to constitute what a drug approval would because they change everything in slight ways.
Hmm.
And that's how our body kind of repairs itself to get right on track. Now, you show any good medical doctor and they look at, say, like a metabolic profile of someone that has a huge change in cholesterol but no changes anywhere else versus someone that has slight to moderate changes all in the right direction across the whole panel, they're going to say that latter person is getting healthier and this one person really isn't. They're just using a drug to address one issue. Um, but the using a drug to address one issue is going to pass as science-based medicine as how we define it today, whereas the latter is not under our current
Hmm.
definition. So basically, our entire academic research paradigm is built upon this foundational research, which has some big questions of the integrity of it. You know,
Yeah.
and the biggest name in those early days that owned the journals that was doing this um, is a known fraudster who embezzled hundreds of millions of dollars from pensioners, um, who was murdered on a yacht and tied to Mossad as an
Wow.
intelligence act. And that is how our entire academic publishing came to be.
Of
So
course it
there's
was.
huge questions on that. And I say this, but I really want to caution that this doesn't mean that there's widespread fraud or conspiracy in science today. There could have just been for a few formative years, which changes the direction of how we perceive everything.
Yeah, and that's a really important perspective too. I think a lot of doctors, I mean, Obviously, I think there are doctors that I wouldn't want to go near, but there are a lot I think who genuinely I think they're doing what's right, following certain research, but they are just either ill-informed or misinformed or not given, all the context behind everything. And that's where I've gotten really cautious with who's on my medical team and who's on my health team because anybody who, I mean, even I've told the story before, but even let's say I went to in college, I went to get birth control because everyone told me when you have bad periods, just go on birth control at 18, right? And so I go into the doctor, no lifestyle conversation, nothing like that. She prescribes a pill. I come back and I'm like, hey, I'm gaining weight and I'm getting acne. She's like, well, that's only your lifestyle. There's no way there's no study showing that this medicine can cause weight gain or acne. Maybe you're just eating more. And that's the answer I left with, right? And I think you see that a lot in the medical world where there's almost this like eyes wide shut mentality to lifestyle interventions. And there's even have been times where I'll come in and say, I'm taking this supplement, I'm trying this. And they're like, well, I've never heard of that. But I mean, if it's working for you, whatever, keep going. And it's kind of sad to not have that integrative partnership where we look at all of these lifestyle components and try to move the needle in a proper direction and kind of partner with doctors. I feel like now it's become really in the hands of the person to do their own research because it's really hard to find experts that you can trust out there. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah, 100%. I'd say it happens on both sides. And unfortunately, say on like the evidence-based medicine side, they often will just say, well, none of these other things have sufficient evidence without looking into why they maybe don't have sufficient
Mm-hmm.
evidence to the definition of how we consider evidence to be sufficient. And then on the natural side, they'll say, oh, this sounds interesting and it's natural, so it must be good for you, even if there's evidence of harm or no evidence whatsoever.
Right.
We need to fix this by fixing science, right? By fixing what is going wrong in scientific research and publishing so that we can understand ourselves as complex organisms better than our paradigm of single receptor, single molecule is doing. Um, Now, already saying metabolic research, it's shifting, and they're realizing that certain ratios, like ratio of cholesterol to triglycerides or HDL to triglycerides and such are better markers than doing anything. I think we need to figure out better ratios of entire metabolic parameters of, say, every marker that we look at for a certain issue in the brain. And we need to figure out formulas so that we see movement in certain areas so that we can look at these lifestyle interventions. Because if we do it that way, we might start seeing that something like diet or exercise is profoundly more impactful than certain drugs that are just moving one needle.
Mm-hmm.
But because of what is consensus in doing statistical analyses in academia right now, it just never gets done.
Right.
And we need like a culture change in academia to acknowledge the way we've done things might not be the best way to do things. And we need to re explore all of these things through a different lens.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I love something like H2 tabs where you are going to, you take it and you might not be like, oh my gosh, every single disease I've ever had is just gone overnight. But you're going to see benefits in your brain health, your metabolism, maybe your hormones, maybe your heart, maybe, all these things, your energy. And so it's just, you're going to feel just, I feel like you're just going to feel better. That was my experience taking it. It was just feeling energized, feeling fresh, feeling good. For you, what have been some
Yeah.
of the biggest changes that you've noticed?
I mean, it took a couple of weeks to notice like my joints loosen up, and I'll do a washout every 6 months or so, and my joints freeze, and then I take it and they
Wow.
loosen up. What I say to people is, you know, when brands come to me and they're like, "What do we say to someone who says they don't feel anything?" And I say, "Well, it's really hard to notice if there's nothing really wrong with you, how things are just being slowly normalized."
Hmm.
I tell people to take it on a day you feel really
Yeah.
maybe you went out too late, you got a terrible sleep. Maybe you're jet lagged. Maybe you've injured or hurt yourself. That's when you see the benefits of hydrogen,
Mm.
and you actually have to pay attention. And when I tell people to pay attention to what is going on, like take note. Like say you are hungover or you slept poorly or you're jet lagged, and you have a quadruple espresso and now you feel wired. And that's
Yeah.
very easy to know that you feel wired. And then you have hydrogen and you're like, oh, I just feel normal. But think about that. You feel normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have research head to head against caffeine showing more robust improvements in brain metabolism under fMRIs, right? In a quadruple crossover study. And another doing something called the attention network test showing that we were equivalent but outperformed caffeine on orienting. So, say for that kind of like attention aspect, caffeine is high in alerting, right? That is a stimulant effect. Hydrogen isn't a stimulant effect. It's restoring brain metabolism as if you hadn't gone through that stress. So
Mm.
you just feel normal. You don't feel high,
Yeah.
right? And that return to normalcy is so much more subtle than throttling something, like with the stimulant.
Right.
So, I tend to tell people take it when something stressful is happening and then be aware of your transition from feeling like crap to feeling normal or feeling closer to normal, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot more subtle and you have to pay attention.
I love that. And, I'm personally trying to overcome some caffeine addiction. So I've been down to like 1 cup a day or 2 half caps. I just had a half cap before this. Um, and I'm like, I just don't want to rely on stimulants to stay awake and to function or to focus. I always feel like if I want to be on camera, if I need to focus, I need a stimulant. And so the idea of just like, and I need to order more H2 tabs. It's been a minute since I've taken it. I'm like, wait, I need to be trying because lately I've been having like some insomnia and feeling like I need to have a stimulant in the morning to stay on track. And I'm like, that's not good. I don't love that. And I feel like I'm healthier than 99% of people. Like I biohack all the time and, just really live a clean lifestyle. So I'm like, if I feel like this, how does the general population feel? And I feel like that I really need to test this out and see just kind of the comparison of just relying on the H2 tabs versus relying on caffeine. Cause that's where I've been at. Is like this caffeine addiction has got to go.
Yeah, yeah. And, I've been like seriously addicted to caffeine in my younger years. Caffeine's interesting, right? Caffeine has in the right doses, has shown to dramatically reduce risk of many, many neurological diseases and perhaps even extend lifespan.
Wow.
So I dose my caffeine exactly every morning, but I don't take it at the same time.
Hmm.
Um, one thing I write about, I think in my first book that's releasing next week, but I can't quite remember. Different states of mind, and I kind of rally against this culture of perfectly structuring your days, right? Because you can't tell your brain to be creative if it's not in a creative state.
Right.
And if you're in a creative state, but you've written on your calendar that now is productive time, you're not going to be that productive.
Right.
So I find my most creative time where I get the most thinking and the most writing done is usually late night and early morning. So often I have my caffeine, I have 200 milligrams every day, sometime in the morning, but I wake up at 5:30 a.m. And if I wake up with my mind racing, I don't have my caffeine until my mind stops racing,
Mm.
until my creativity wears off. And then maybe I have my caffeine at 9 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah.
But if I wake up tired and not creative, I have it immediately,
Right.
and that's what I tend to recommend to people to really be productive in all areas. Know your mental state and what your mind is primed for at that moment. And if you're
Hmm.
trying to be thoughtful and productive, now might not be the time to take caffeine. If you're
Right.
trying to do a lot of busy work, having your caffeine at that time might be a great time.
Yeah.
Right? If you're trying to like just power through a lot of emails that don't take a lot of thought or something like that.
Yeah, that's smart too, because I think that hyper rigidity can decrease mindfulness, right? Like people aren't really tuning in, like, how do I feel right now? Like, how do I really feel if it's all by the book? And I've been that way. Like, I've had a really solid morning routine for years. And I'm starting to realize even there'll be times in the afternoon where, because I used to have like 2, 3 cups of coffee a day. And I've learned like, okay, well, if I'm really that tired, maybe what I need is actually to go lay down. Like
Mhm.
maybe in the afternoon, if I'm crashing, I need to go rest instead of medicating.
Or
And
Or you could be overslept too. So
That's
maybe that's
true.
the last thing you need. Maybe you need to go for a workout,
Yeah.
right?
I don't think I'm overslept though. I
I,
don't
I, I'm not,
see
I'm not,
that.
I'm not saying you in specific.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
saying
for
for like
sure.
people that listening, like a lot of
Yeah.
people get really tired because they're oversleeping, they're over resting,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things, like, I think we're really going to know in the future exact protocols for all these hormetic stresses, for diet, for how much sleep you need. And they'll tell people to get 8 hours of sleep a day. If I slept 8 hours, I'd get nothing done because
Yeah.
I'd just be in a brain fog of oversleep. I sleep
Wow.
5 to 6 hours a day, depending on how much my body needs, right?
Yeah.
And everyone is different. And that's the same thing with exercise. You wouldn't tell your grandma to do the same exercise protocol as an Olympian's doing, right?
Right.
Same thing for cold or heat. Like if I stayed in a sauna as long as other people do, I might die, right? I can't handle the heat very well. And if some people stayed in a cold plunge as long as I do, they might get hypothermia, right?
Right.
So it's also contextual, but that's going to change for every person, and within every person every day, depending on
Hmm.
what your total stress load is, where you are in life. Like you commented about eating food. Well, your diet might be perfect for you today, but in 10 years, as hormones changes, your microbiome changes, everything like that, it might be a terrible diet for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, there's even been times in my young 20s I would lift heavy, do hit conditioning like every day. And I mean, I honestly felt fine doing it. I had the energy to do it versus now I've had to learn to scale back, add some Pilates in, like, like I'll still lift, still push hard, but learn when to do it cyclically, learn when to scale back, when to rest, when to do low impact, and like realizing that just because when I was 21, I was a little Energizer bunny, just trashing my joints every day. Like I can't do that anymore. I'm not and I'm
Yep.
not that same age and my body has different needs and realizing that even just having that body response, like your body responds so differently to different stimuli as you age. And it's important to never get so stuck in a routine that you can't listen to feedback because your body will always give you feedback. You just have
Yeah.
to be tuned in to listen.
Yeah, 100%. It's one of those weird things where, in many cases, I advocate exactly what you're saying, kind of like bro science over the double blind RCTs, because double blind RCTs are population level data, and we're not an average. Every person is quite unique. But again, I think better science is going to be the answer. I think as
Yeah.
wearable technology gets better, as
Hmm.
real time monitoring of our markers, you know, gets better, we're going to be able to create protocols for each individual. We
Yeah.
might be 5 or 10 years away from really being able to do this, but I'm really optimistic about that in the future.
I love that. Do you wear any wearable like biomarker trackers?
I wear an Aura ring.
Yeah.
Um, I've tried some of the others. I don't know why, like, because my skin isn't super sensitive to other things, but with all of like the watches,
Hmm.
I get really bad rashes. Every
Hmm.
band I've ever tried, and it's within like a week or so, just my skin is raw.
I wonder if it's like latex or something in the bands, if it's like those kind of rubbery ones.
Maybe I've tried leather too, though, and
Hmm.
it's weird. Um,
It
because
could be the
I'll wear,
EMF.
yeah, I'm not sure, but just yeah, it'll my skin will be raw
That's
from all the
so
wearables.
That's so fascinating. Well, and I know with Aura Ring, you can turn off the EMF. I don't know if you do, but with a lot of the other ones, I used to wear a Garmin or different heart rate monitors or different things. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I am just wearing EMF all the time. And so I stopped wearing anything. But I've been curious about Aura because I know you can turn off the connectivity. And I like that idea. That's attractive to me to be able to track like my HRV and my steps and different things and my sleep without like having Bluetooth connected to my body constantly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's interesting. And I don't know if the others have changed. Um, I wrote a blog like 6 years ago where I would wear multiple different wearables at the same time
Oh, wow.
and rate them on like accuracy of like distance walked and calories and everything, using like known data and everything. Aura One back then, that was 6 years ago. But when I'd go on hikes out of cell reception, um, the Whoop and the Bio Strap, I remember, did not collect the data. I'd
Oh,
get
wow.
back and it was just blank, but the Aura would refresh the data, even though there was no internet connectivity
Hmm.
during the hike. So that was an interesting feature.
Really
And that
cool.
might be what you're talking about. Like if you
Mhm.
shut it down, maybe. like turn off the Bluetooth and everything to it, and then reconnect it later that day, it's like storing the data and it's going to update to your phone.
Exactly. Yeah. And I prefer that so much more. I've really gotten away from, personally at least, like wearable technology just because I'm very EMF sensitive. And as you know, I'm a creative and I've heard of a lot of creatives who have that experience, which was why I was curious for you. Like maybe the rash is a weird reaction to that because I know for me, like if I wear it all the time, I'm fried mentally. I get like jitters and anxiety, and I've had to really just not do that. Which, yeah, with Aura Ring, since you can turn it off, it can be out of, it can be out of connectivity, out of service, and then at the end of the day, just connect it and send all your data over. So I'm very curious if that could be making an impact. But have you seen any biomarkers move just wearing the Aura Ring with your H2 tabs? Or I don't know if you've even been wearing it as long as you've been taking hydrogen. So
Yeah, I started after I started hydrogen, so it's really hard to
yeah,
know. But
yeah.
it's funny. One of the studies we have, we did at UCLA in mice and was on sleep. Um, and the reason that started was the PhD student, he did his PhD on this, uh, contacted me because he started, using them and noticed on his aura that his HRV and sleep was improving. Right,
Wow.
right after he started, the hydrogen. So that actually led to one of our preclinical studies where we showed, you know, pretty interesting and significant results on the hydrogen tablets with sleep, at least in mice.
That's incredible. Yeah, HRV, that's a cool one. That's cool to see that improving because I mean, I think we all want to I feel like HRV is one of like the master biomarkers, right? Like we all want to have a better HRV. So that's pretty incredible. And the sleep as well. Well, I'm curious with you, since obviously it sounds like you're doing a lot of different things for your health. You're obviously really immersed in that world. What is your current health goal?
Hmm. My health goal, I would say, because ironically, my most unhealthy came years after finding hydrogen because I was
Sure.
working like 110 hours a week and would forget to eat all day and was stressed out and then would order a
Yeah.
pizza and open a bottle of wine. So my health goal is always I'm 40 now, to stay healthier for as long as I can than I was at 35, right? And to look at that and basically just slowly improve. I've been doing a lot of stuff like stem cells. My joints are mangled, but this is my left shoulder, but it doesn't go past here. But
Hmm.
I still kickbox 3 times a week. I lift weights twice a week, sometimes 3 times. Um, Walk through the forest almost every day. So really, yeah, that's my goal. I look at where I was at 35. I'm never going to get to the fitness I was at 29, but that's fine, right?
Yeah.
Just so long as I'm always better than 35. And that means I want to be better at 35 when I'm 65,
Right.
right? So I'm looking at this, looking at normal entropy and like collapse of us, and I need to get a huge head start, right? And ensuring I'm as strong and healthy as I can be, knowing that it's going to decline a little bit every year.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's, I think, a great goal. Where can people find you? Where can people find H2 tabs if they're like, wait, holy crap, I need to try this?
Yeah. So my site is alextarnava.com. I'm on Instagram too, at alextarnava. So I do have a lot of books coming out like pretty soon. One thing I'll say about the books is they're all going through a nonprofit, and all of my books will be free forever on my website as a
Wow.
PDF or an audio file. But if you do buy them as a hard copy or Audible or Kindle or anything like that, all of the proceeds will go to promoting the books. To disseminate information. I don't want money to get in the way of someone getting knowledge. So my first book coming out in early October. It's just literally finalizing the formatting to start printing. Um, it's called Stress Hacked: How to Get Stronger in a Civilization Designed to Break You. And really, it's two books. Think of one side. The one side's the body, and the other side's the mind. And they start at opposite covers, inverted, so they meet in the center, right? Because I didn't want either the body or the mind to come first. I don't think you can take precedent on one or the other. But the message of the book is all how to get stronger, both in body and mind, through purposeful adversity and stress and struggle. And at the end, the message is we cannot be strong unless we have unity of mind, body, and our purpose. And if we're lacking in any of them, where we are strong becomes a weapon,
Mm-hmm.
both internally and externally. And the purpose of strength is both to look after ourselves, but also those around us. And unless we reconcile our whole self, that's not going to happen.
That's beautiful. That sounds like a really amazing read.
Yeah. It's not short because, strength is not a hack, right?
Right.
And my title, Stress Hacked, is ironic,
Yeah.
because nothing about strength is a hack. It is
Mm-hmm.
all purposeful intent and lifelong struggle. So I think the book's around 700 pages. It's not short.
Amazing. Yeah. I love that so much. And then for H2 tabs, is it just h2tabs.com?
Yeah, I think their drinkhh2tab.com is
Okay.
their name off the top of my head.
Amazing. I'll make sure to link your website and their website in the show notes for people to check out your books, to shop H2 tabs and know they're going to want to try them. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining and just educating me and the audience on all the amazing benefits of hydrogen. I'm like, wait, I need to go order some more right now. I'm inspired after this episode. So I am just really excited to get this knowledge out there. And if you guys love this episode, please make sure to give us a 5-star review. You can always share on your stories, tag Alex, tag H2 Tabs, and myself. Let's spread the word. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.